Hello everybody and welcome back to a Fast Fact series. I'm Ted, your host, and for this Fast Fact we're going to look at the Sassanians. Now, the Sassanians were the successors to the Parthians, not just in the Near East, but in the Persian heartland itself, on the Iranian plateau. Trajan, going back to Emperor Trajan, the second of the five good emperors in the Roman tradition, Trajan had decisively defeated the Parthian kings using a double envelopment strategy to crush the Parthian armies and move down the Tigris and the Euphrates River. And once he moved down the Tigris and the Euphrates, Trajan captured the principal Parthian cities of Seleucia and Ctesiphon. Now, the capture of these two cities broke the Parthian ability to contest the Romans or defy their wishes. The Parthian kings were weakened, and the Sassanians were then able to move in and establish themselves. Now, the last Roman campaign against the Parthians took place in 218, and the Parthian king Artabanus V, he went down in defeat. A little later against the Sassanians. Now, the Sassanians had served as client kings of the Parthians, and they had served the client kings for a few generations. Now, the success of the Sassanian kings were tied to their superb organization, but it was also tied to their legitimacy in the eyes of their fellow Iranians or Persians. They were viewed as the rightful heirs of the Achaemenid dynasty. If you remember, if we're going back, there's a huge gap in time between the arrival of the Sassanians and the defeat of Darius III and the conquest of the first great Persian Empire by Alexander III of Macedon. After that, after the Argead conquest, much of Asia fell into the hands of the Seleucids, and after the Seleucids, we saw for a brief moment Pontus and Armenia rise to great power status in the Near East and around Mesopotamia, and then immediately after them, we see the Parthians rise. None of those dynasties, none of those empires were seen as legitimate heirs to the great empire founded by Cyrus in the eyes of the Iranian people. They have fallen from the imperial. They have fallen pretty hard and pretty fast from the imperial heights. The Parthians were an Iranian-speaking peoples, and they were peoples from the Iranian plateau, but they were not viewed as legitimate successors because they Hellenized. They were Philhellene. They adopted a lot of trappings of Greek culture, and that was seen as inferior. It was seen as foreign, as alien, as not being of Mesopotamia or the ancient Near East. So the Sassanians, they adhere to this very strict Iranian culture. There's a very strict Iranian/Persian tradition, and they had the full backing of the peoples on the Iranian plateau. Their power base, unlike the Parthians, the Sassanian power base was built almost exclusively on the Iranian elites. The Sassanians, in their zeal and to more closely link themselves with their Achaemenid successors, they adopted the titles, the symbols, and the traditions of that dynasty. The cities of Mesopotamia were nice additions to the Sassanians, and they did actively campaign to capture those cities, but they were not vital to their longevity. And this was a dramatic reversal for the Romans. The Romans had been able to control the East by threatening those cities, those Mesopotamian cities that the Parthians controlled. They could not threaten the Sassanians in the same way, because the power base of the Sassanians lay east of the Zagros Mountains. Now, Mesopotamia had moved from being the vital zone of contest between Rome and her eastern neighbors, Roman and her Persian neighbors, and it literally just became a frontier. And Mesopotamia was now just a frontier border region that both empires, simply marked in and fought over. The Romans were not able to bring the Sassanian Shahs to the negotiating table the same way they had been able to do so with the Parthian kings. When the Emperor Julian launched his great expedition against the Sassanians in the year 336 of the Common Era, he encountered a situation in Mesopotamia where Mesopotamia is heavily fortified and the Shah is willing to trade space for a strategic advantage. The Shahs were also successful in building a bureaucratic state. Their administration replaced the loose alliance structure that the Parthians had put in place. And it is here that we'll break and we'll end our quick fast look at the Sassanians. They were the greatest, I would say, of the eastern rivals of the Romans. And I would say that the Sassanians were the greatest rivals that the Romans had since the Carthaginians. Personal opinions is that's just a personal opinion. It's not a consensus at all among historians. But hit like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you thought about the fast fact. Let me know what you thought about the Sassanians, and if you think that these Sassanians rank higher or lower in terms of adversaries for Rome. As always, I'm Ted, and I'll see you guys next time.